Welcome to the Passive Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast with your host, Andrew Keel. This is the podcast where you can get the education you need to invest 100% passively in the highly profitable niche of mobile home parks.
Welcome to the Passive Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. This is your host, Andrew Keel, and today we have an amazing guest in Mr. Dan Gibson of 43 Properties. Before we dive in, I want to ask you a real quick favor. Would you mind please taking an extra 30 seconds and heading over to iTunes to rate this podcast with 5 stars? This helps us get more listeners, and it means the absolute world for me. So thanks for making my day with that review of the show. All right, let's dive in. Dan has been investing in real estate for over 12 years now and is the CEO of his commercial real estate investment company based out of St. Louis, Missouri. His company, 43 Properties, specializes in mobile home park and self-storage investments. He started the business with his dad and brother and grew their company's portfolio to over $50 million in assets under management. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it, man.
Dude, happy to have you on the show. I know you and I have been talking for several years now, so excited to kind of share your story with the audience. Maybe you could start there by just kind of sharing how you got into mobile home parks.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I don't think many people, grow up, go to school and college and think, you know what, I really want to be in the mobile home park business, right? So there's always interesting stories in this asset class, certainly. But so me and my family, we got into it just kind of by accident, right? So we started buying single families, small commercial, small multifamilies, and just with talking to local, we kind of did everything boots on ground. Grew up in St. Louis, so just obviously started there, and just accidentally I was looking at a duplex that a lady was selling, and we couldn't make the deal work. She wanted too much money, and she was like, "Well, you sound like you kind of know what you're looking for. You like cash flow. Like you should check out, my trailer park." And I was like, no way. I was like, what are you talking about? Like I don't want to own that. And she's like, no. She was like, you're kind of missing the boat. Like this thing cash flow is great. And she was like, let me show you. And she was like, I think how did the story go? So she couldn't sell it traditionally because she was very big on the cash payers. So she was like, look, a bank's not gonna finance this for you at the number I'm going to ask because my tax returns will not support this. I was like, okay. So I literally went out with her on the first of the month, and she was like, so here's the reported and here's all the cash that sometimes doesn't all make it, into the bank accounts or whatever. So it's like it's my favorite story, and I kind of trusted her, and she was a savvy businesswoman and she knew her way around, and she, did a seller carry for us for, I think it was 3 years, and let us build up and, report everything and look good by the bank. And during those 3 years, that was kind of how we were like, wow, this is a niche. We like this niche. We don't know really many people in it. So let's dive in. And in fact, I think that might be where you and I met. We got this thing under contract. And obviously we were used to rentals and we managed everything in house. And then we started Googling mobile home education, whatever. And then that's when Frank's course, Mobile Home University, popped up, and we booked, the flights and bought the tickets to the next Mobile Home University class.
Wow. That is amazing. So what was that? Was that 2017, 2018?
Ooh. Yeah, that would have been maybe even before. It was either 16 or 17. I think, because So we still have that park today. I had to refi her at 3 years. Yeah. So yeah, it's been at least six or 7 years with that one. So
that's fantastic, man. I love that. And then tell us what happened after that one. So that was like, all right, we like this business. And then you guys just really went to work and acquired a really nice portfolio around St. Louis, right?
Yep. So then we owned that for a couple years. Didn't take long to realize, okay, there's a niche here. A lot of mom and pop sellers. And I just think, there's just so many more mobile home parks out there than people realize, because they're just not looking for them. They don't, they drive right past them and they don't even think about them. So, we started hitting the pavement, just old fashioned, networking, cold calling, and just started, buying as many parks as we could in the St. Louis area, started raising funds, kind of syndications and then different investors, here and there. And yeah, I think at the peak, we had about a little over 1,000 lots spread out through 15 parks. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That
And
is amazing.
that was probably for the next 6 years. Cause I mean, we're still kind of buying here and there, but yeah. So for the next 5-6 years, that was kind of all we put all of our eggs kind of in that basket. Cause, we knew people, weren't really looking at them and weren't really buying them.
Sure. And you stuck close to home, close to St.
Yeah.
Louis. Was the majority of the parks, off market, direct to owners, or did you get some through
So
brokers as well?
we definitely got a few through brokers. Most of them were off market, direct to owners. You'd be surprised, you start talking to a bunch of the local bankers, they know of the mobile home parks that they've either financed in the past or they heard someone was selling.
Sure.
And I think we probably got 2 or 3 parks, that way. So yeah, just old fashioned, I was never shy about just driving past a mobile home park sign, taking a picture and making phone calls until I got to the owner and, told them what me and my family did. And, we wanted to buy them in the area. So, and yeah, we stuck around. It was probably, I think our furthest park away was probably about 70 miles. So we
Hmm.
pretty much stuck within an hour and a half drive range of St. Louis.
Which proved to be pretty fruitful, right? Because you guys just had a pretty nice exit
Yep.
of not all the portfolio, but the majority of it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. So we took advantage kind of some of the big money, the hedge funds moving in. And the easiest way to describe it is we packaged up about 60% of the lots and then packaged them and sold them, took some cash off the table. And now we still have the rest. We should try and build that back up again and do it all over again. So
I love it. I love it,
yeah.
man. Love it. Tell me, Dan, what has been the toughest hurdle for you guys in the business?
Yeah. We tried, I guess the short answer is I would say the management. And I think for us, and for whatever reason, a lot of our parks had across our portfolio, we had about 45 to 50% park owned homes. So
Mm,
we had a pretty significant park owned home package there. And obviously that comes with a lot more management. So at the beginning, we were obviously didn't know any better. And as we kept buying and kept growing, we already had an in-house management. We had tried outsourcing management a few different times, even with our single families and stuff. And nobody manages property like you do,
sure.
or your team does. So we just kind of hired that up in-house. We had, I think, again at the peak, we had 3 full-time property managers, 8 maintenance guys, and then me and my brother who were kind of overseeing everything and still pretty involved in the day to day. So I would say that was probably our biggest challenge is because you get to a certain size and all the lease docs, all the software, you can pretty systematize that. It's the employees, dealing with them, dealing, with one-off tenants that need to be escalated to you, and just doing that in a proper way and kind of doing it in our, kind of like our core values that we try to use and that. So I think that's probably been the biggest challenge.
Definitely. And that's been something we've heard before from other operators is just the management involved. It's definitely not, passive when you're managing these things and owning them yourself. It's an operating business, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about those park owned homes when you guys went to exit that portfolio to, to a bigger group. How did they value those? Did you guys have them sold on lease options or were they straight rentals? Maybe shed
Yeah.
some light there.
Like everybody, we tried to lease to option, lease to own as many park owned homes as we could. I would say just from our experience, that's easier said than done. So if someone out there's plan is, I'm going to just lease to own all these park owned homes and that's their plan, I would definitely say, it's definitely the right plan and you should try it, but don't get discouraged by the results because we kind of thought, it was going to be way easier to to sell those off. So we had most of them in rentals. And in terms of the exit, we were kind of always told, even as we were buying and building up the portfolio, hey, nobody's going to value these park-owned homes or the income they bring in just because it's basically offset by the expenses, which is pretty much true. I do think, though, if you get to a certain size, just like with a normal, brick and mortar rental portfolio, you do start to see economies of scale. With our in-house management team, we were able to really systematize the maintenance crews and, like we had our own HVAC in-house, that kind of stuff. So we actually did, I think the tides are shifting a little bit. I've heard from a couple of groups that we got the full valuation for the park-owned home income as well. It was all underwritten the same, like lot rent, which was kind of new. We talked with a few different brokers, and a couple of them were like, "Oh, no, you're not there yet. We're not, or the market's not there yet." But then we talked with a couple others who said, "No, we've got a couple buyers who don't care, and if the income's there, the NOI is the NOI, right? So, that's kind of all we care about."
Wow, that's pretty awesome for you guys. I'm sure that helped boost the sale price.
No, it did. And really for an industry as a whole too. And again, I guess for better or worse, that was kind of how we always underwrote our deals anyway. And maybe that's just from coming from the rental portfolio background. And then also, of course, having our team are kind of already in place. To us, it didn't really matter whether they were park-owned homes. And arguably in some of these counties, it's better to have park-owned homes because you can just, if you have problems, you can just go by normal, eviction housing rules, and you don't have to worry about what's going to happen with this tenant-owned home. So I think for the industry in general, I think it's a great avenue that we're going down for everyone.
Yeah, some people love their park-owned homes, and some people prefer the tenant-owned homes. But one thing, you guys being so localized around St. Louis, you had the 8-member maintenance team that could care for those homes. And I think that's the key. You gotta be able to get to these homes when they have repairs and maintenance issues. So that's awesome, man. Let me ask you this, Dan. What are the most important things that passive investors need to look out for when investing into mobile home parks? Assume that the listeners have never invested in mobile home parks before. Maybe they've invested in apartments or single family. What are the things that are maybe different, that you've noticed from single family and having that rental portfolio to mobile home parks?
I would say kind of along the obvious one is obviously the management lines, having someone you trust. I was kind of going to add at the end of that part was at the point we were when we exited, I would have been completely comfortable managing our team from anywhere. So it absolutely can be done. It's not like, certainly, obviously, us being local helps, but if you have the right team in place, without question, you can do it out of state. You can do it virtually. Now, you might be limited on if you just have one 30-lot park in one town, maybe it's probably not going to make sense, but it absolutely can be done with the right scale. But in terms of, other items that I would that come to mind when I think of that, for a passive investor would be, management, no matter what kind of asset class, is always going to be number one to focus on. And then number two, mobile home specific, you're certainly going to have less headaches with public utilities. That's should be an obvious one.
And that's something that I feel like we don't talk about enough in our interviews is public utilities, because have you owned parks with private?
We haven't, not necessarily because we haven't tried. It just seems like there's a couple parks come to mind that we passed on, needed a whole, brand new septic systems. But if those septic systems checked out fine, by the inspector, we would have bought those no problem. So I guess it's just more maybe a run of luck in where we did.
And I own some with private utilities, and it's not like a deal killer for us, but it is very expensive. Like the hidden CapEx is what really gets you. Like in that park we have in Edwardsville, there's 67 separate concrete septic tanks in there.
Oh wow!
And there's also a lot of trees. So when those roots get into the lateral lines, I'd say we probably replace 2 or 3 a year the lateral lines, and those are
Yep.
$2,000 to $3,000 a pop. So, it's just, you have to account for that. You got to make sure your expense ratios are appropriate for that. And then the well system, talk about liability. I mean, this is drinking water for your
Yep.
community. And if you're not filtering and getting the proper testing, it could be a huge liability. So that's why we pay a third party to manage our water system. But I agree, public utilities are definitely, the way to go, if you can choose.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, I think starting out, obviously, yes. I mean, as you know, there's a deal for everything. And I would never shy away from private utilities if the numbers are right. Now, nor would you, obviously, it sounds like, because we've been doing this for a bit. But if you're doing your first deal, maybe unless it's just an absolute home run, stay away from it, do the public. And that's not even to say that there's obviously no issues with public. I mean, because we've got a park, one of our first parks that we bought, that we still have, it's got some older water lines, and we've been fixing those more and more. And, so, CapEx is a real thing. And in the mobile home park space, it's typically private utilities, water lines, sewer lines, roads, right? And those things do deteriorate. So,
and they can be expensive.
They can be expensive. So I think, it's certainly nothing to be afraid of. Obviously, risk is going to come with any deal you do, but those are kind of the big ticket, mobile home park specific items. So
agreed. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, Matt. Dan, what does the perfect mobile home park look like in your eyes, and why?
Boy, my answer might be different than some people, right? I know you're down in Florida. I think you're still down in Florida, right?
I am.
You guys love your nice, super nice curbed, perfect weather mobile home park, class A stuff. I love all of our parks, by the way, I don't know that I consider any of them A parks. They were all at best, B pluses. We had a handful of B pluses, but I would say even most of them, though, are in the C range. You will get the most gratification taking an old, decrepit park that has just been run down, turning that thing around. So to me, weirdly enough, buying that just sore eye, and you know what? It might even be overrun with, drugs and all kinds of issues. But if you have the stomach for it and you're going to be evicting people, the amount of goodwill you get from the local city people, the police, fire, all these things, that to me is the perfect park. Now, you also typically, you're getting that hopefully at a much better deal, which means on the back end, you're going to get rewarded for your risk and your time. So so to me, I think my favorite deals that we have bought have been probably the worst ones, at closing when we bought it, that you were just like, like I wouldn't send my wife through it right now, but give me 6 months, and I think you'll also be surprised too at how many really good people live there. They just live on a budget, and that's what they can afford. And all of a sudden those people start coming out of their houses and they're like, I'm so glad someone new's in town enforcing rules, evicting, the problems. That's the magic. I think that's, it's easy to talk numbers and get excited about, oh, you made this or made that. But, you are changing people's lives when you come in and improve a community.
100% agree with you, Dan. I mean, the second mobile home park that I moved into with my wife, when we first got there, the night before we went to the park to close and sign the deal at the title company, we went out to eat, and we asked the waiter, we said, hey, have you heard of this mobile home park? It's called this and it's located over here. She said, oh, don't go in there. It's infested with drugs. Yep. And it was like, oh, geez, what did we get ourselves into? I'm all the way up in Ohio is where this park is located. And we closed on the deal. I was nervous. I had butterflies in my stomach. We went in, we moved into the house in the front of the park. And I tell you what, the people in there were the nicest people ever. I mean, my wife and I would take a walk around the park. We had our 1-year-old daughter with us. We'd push her in the stroller, and people were just so nice, bringing us food and gifts. And the stigma is strong in mobile home
Oh man.
parks, and you can't let that deter you, because there is some really good people in these communities that just, it's easy to say, oh, that's full of drugs, but you've never been in there. You
Yeah.
don't know. So
And typically, right, like that probably, it had terrible stigma, and it was probably what, one lot, maybe two, that was the problem. And it's like, you kick those
yeah,
people
if
out, like you,
that, if
exactly,
that, it
right?
was just the owners that owned it. They never invested into it. They never put any money into it. They owned it for 20 years and they never put a dollar back into it. They just sucked it dry. And the tenants had been there that long time, just
Mhm.
living in those conditions. And when we came in and we improved it and rebranded it and, did little things, we fixed the roads, put fencing and signage and painted and got rid of the old vacant homes. They were like, this is amazing. This
Yeah.
is awesome. And they were so thankful,
It's
so
all,
it's, and even, yeah, we did raise rents, rents went up, but they also got something for it. And
of
they
course,
were
yeah.
not, they were still happy with the end result.
Right. And I mean, sometimes that's the hard part. Obviously, this is still a business. We do still, we have mouths to feed on our end. We have employees, yada, yada, yada. But you're right. It's at least, I mean, it's a two-way street. We're going to hopefully buy something, improve it, give you more value. For that more value, rents do need to come up a little bit.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
So,
is like, us as owners, it's a win-win. It's a benefit, because we want the community to look nice, but also so do the bankers, right? Like, if the nicer the community looks, the more, debt and better debt terms we can get on these communities. So,
mhm,
we don't want to just have them, look like trailer trash. We want them to
right.
look nicer, and they'll get better debt terms. And Fannie Mae won't just finance anything, and they're the
Yep.
best terms you're going to get. So, yeah,
100%.
100%, man. Dan, what are some mistakes that you've made that we can learn from?
Yeah. I mean, the list is probably very long. Um, I think as you're growing, and buying more, you always want to try and please everyone. So I guess from an operational standpoint, the day that we kind of systematize, okay, everybody's on this lease, everybody's on this software, whatever that's, rent payments, rent manager, whatever you guys use. We were trying to kind of just piecemeal it all together and deal with situations one-offs. That was just a time suck. And then you ended up, these are small communities, right? So like, if someone came into you with a serious issue, whether they got laid off, and I mean, of course, this is kind of pre-COVID, but like, and they had a legitimate story, like, I know you, you know me, like, we're not like, I don't want to put anybody on the street. So it's like, okay, well, let's work out a payment plan. Well, that type of news starts traveling, fast in the parks, and then people who have no reason to want, these same things will come in, and then, so I think from an operational standpoint, kind of really getting all the documentation in line. And again, now that I've gone through the back end on an exit, I thought we had good documentation. We were maybe 50 or 60% of where we needed to be. And I thought we really were on top of that kind of stuff. So don't, don't be lax on that. Make sure that documentation's in line, make sure the leases are updated. I mean, we had some leases from parks that were 7 years old from the old owners that we were just like, oh yeah, they've just, I guess, been on month to month for the longest time, so
Sure.
that type of stuff. Those are some, obvious operational mistakes. I'm trying to think. I don't think.
Did you guys always use one bank for all of your operating accounts?
Yes,
That's
until,
smart. That's
so
one thing
well,
that I didn't do. We were buying in different states, and
uh-huh.
we used it. The bank that gave us the loan, they always wanted the operating account. So we were like, okay, well, we'll have an operating account with this small bank and
And
this
this
small
and
bank
this.
and this one, and all different logins. Oh, that was a mess. That
So
was a mistake.
we only corrected it though a couple of years ago. So
Okay.
for the last couple of years, it was great because we're like, okay, this is way easier. But we did the same thing. Don't like, because, well, and our kind of rationale was, well, we have different investors and different pieces and got to keep everything separate. When in
Separate.
reality, it was like, well, you could just have a management agreement and then, the money flows wherever it needs to flow. So we only did that the last couple of years. So we were kind of behind on that as well. I was trying to think. So one thing I think I would not recommend is after we did, we bought the first 4 or 5 parks, we always did the survey and the phase one.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of thought we knew probably too much. Then we did on a couple of the next few purchases. We didn't do those things because we were like, these things check out. Like there was no obvious red flags, no gas stations, no railroads, whatever. And to kind of come for full circle on the exit, we had like this little 12 lot throw-in park that was kind of a throw-in to us. And just because it was kind of in a weird location, we were like, just throw it in for the exit. Well, it had all kind of environmental issues, or at least it's basically just has a huge plant across the street that basically nobody wanted it. So that cost us, some decent money. So again, I think especially after you start doing it, like I would never not do the phase one survey. Fine, but I would still do a survey. But the phase one, most importantly, we got kind of lax because we were like, we know what we're doing. There's no major issues, and it cost us. Luckily, it was just a 12 lot park. I mean, if that would have been an 80 lot park,
oh yeah,
this might have been a different conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's one thing that, going back to the basics, there's a reason, Frank and all the other, professional investors, you guys do those phase ones probably on every part. And I mean, we've been, we did at the start, and I don't know why we didn't continue. And so that's one thing I wish we've done.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. I mean, it's when you're in the swing of things, like one operator was like, hey, you could just pay $300 and get the file on the property instead of getting the phase one. And we looked at that and we were like, you know what? Someone always told me, it might've been Frank. He was like, the phase one is an insurance policy. You're basically, buying an insurance policy from that engineer that's telling you everything's okay in the case something does down the line. So
yeah,
that's been
well,
huge.
And this is actually, I was trying to think, I was like, so the reason we didn't do it on some of those was because, remember, I think probably you remember this, banks used to require them.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was just a bank got comfortable with us. But I think one of our banks, not the main bank we used, but a different local bank, we randomly did a loan with them. And they were like, oh, we kind of do our own mini environmental database search. And everything was fine. And I was like, oh, well, then why do I need the phase one?
We should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, they're financing it. So what do I care? So I think that was kind of what started it. Yeah. And that was on this 12 lot. That was part of this 12 lot park. So there were no red flags on whatever they did. But then you do a full phase one and it was, well, yeah, there's a massive, I don't know what kind of plant was across the street. They were like, yeah, this whole neighborhood's probably a disaster.
Yeah. Jeez.
So
that's a good reminder for everybody listening. Always get a phase one. Just do it. It's worth the money.
I would say pay the $2,000, $2,500, whatever they are nowadays. Just
worth it. Yeah. Where do you think the mobile home park industry is headed? Given the woes in the economy with inflation and interest rates, where do you think we're headed?
So I think this was probably the toughest conversation my family had when it came to should we exit or should we not. I am so bullish on the mobile home park space. There's a reason we, kept held back, part of our portfolio. And I really couldn't be more bullish. I just think obviously you go big macro, basic supply and demand. Everybody knows you can't build these things. We're losing them every year. My favorite types of parks are if you can be in the average to above average school districts in decent size MSAs, you will never have a problem, because even if worst came to worst and all your tenants left you with all these homes, if you're still in a decent school district, you can rent those out. And kind of really what opened my eyes to that was one of the second parks we bought was in a really good school district. And we never even, at that point, we didn't even consider school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 3 different people paying us lot rent on a vacant lot just so they could have the mailing address to send their kids to the school district.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that school district should matter. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll add that to the list. So I think if you do that, you're never going to get hurt. But then big picture, I just think, as the industry consolidates, which it seems like it's doing more and more, every month, the more you can hold on, I think the more valuable those parks become. I don't really know. I mean, everyone always says, the affordable housing crisis is real, which, I think we all can understand that and get behind that. I do think whether it's the government or some big time investor player, I do think someone's going to lead a charge at some point to figure out a new way to start building these. Now, they probably won't call them mobile home parks. They'll probably come up with a fancy new, new name, because obviously our stigma is still there. But I do think that, this land is finite, right? And if you've got that mobile home park zoning, I mean, that is a ticket, a grandfathered in ticket that, you're just not going to get these days. So I mean, I couldn't be more bullish. That was the hardest part of selling, because I do think the future is just nothing but up for mobile home parks.
Yeah, I've heard some feedback that, with inflation, I think there was a report today that said it's up 7% from the prior year.
Yep.
That I think the lower income, the lower quartile of people get impacted the hardest.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
That's probably true. I mean, it makes sense, right? But I think, and I don't know about you guys, but it seems like we had a lot of residents on different types of fixed income. I think we started getting, over the last couple of years, a lot of Section 8 renters in our park-owned homes. So I think that is a huge step, again, for the positive of park-owned homes, especially if on the back end you're going to get the value for it. HUD approving mobile homes for Section 8, I think, was a very big deal. So I think that's where, through some sort of government programs, if those low income families get hit the most, they're going to have to do some sort of either up the Section 8 amounts, or they're going to maybe even have to include lot rent in that. I think you might start seeing lot renters be able to qualify for Section 8. Obviously, those types of things are going to go way above our heads as just, regional, national operators. But yeah, they certainly will be impacted the hardest. I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
if only we had a crystal ball to tell us the future, right? But
gosh,
with AI, artificial intelligence coming out, they're saying those service industry type of workers are going to get replaced, the quickest. But at the same time, a lot of our collections over the past year and a half have been really, really great, with all the stimulus money and things like that going out to the residents. Our collections have been better than where they were. So it's weird times, and who knows what the future holds.
So we had the same thing. I think probably like you guys, those first few COVID months, we were like, better watch every.
Buckle down.
Yeah, better really clean some stuff up, because we could be in for a rough ride here. But then it seemed like that drop off never really happened. It seemed like, at least for us, the same knuckleheads that we were going to evict anyway were the ones taking advantage of I don't have to pay you. So it's like, okay, well, those people weren't going to pay me anyway. The people that were in the service industry that really got hit the hardest, those were always the people that were like, hey, I'm picking up side jobs. I'll pay you what I can. And obviously, if someone showed that kind of, integrity and want to do that, like, yeah, of course, we'll work it out with you. We'll work this together. And then the second those grants and stimulus started coming through, I mean, I'm with you. We had some of the best months we've ever had. People catching up on balances. People, So I mean, it was definitely kind of a weird phenomena when we were hitting our goals, and it was like green across the board. I'm like, what's going on here? We've never been this good.
Yeah. We were getting, from rental assistance programs, when people get over $2,000 or $3,000 in amount, balances, you kind of start to write those off eventually. But we were getting where like the rental assistance programs were catching people up, for 4 or 5 months of non-payment.
Absolutely.
So it definitely helped out. Well, tell me, Dan, what's the value proposition at 43 properties? What makes you guys different? And, I know you're looking to grow and buy more parks. Do you think you'll take on investors, when doing that?
Yeah, we definitely, so during the exit, a lot of investors got their money back. They did not want it back, as I'm sure everybody's trying to figure out where to place money these days. So they, they were very adamant about go find something else. So we definitely will do that still. Our value proposition, I still think there's a lot of value in, we were very good about the sub-metering the water in the sewer. I mean, that is an absolute no-brainer. If you're underwriting a park and it's master metered, water, sewer, typically public utilities, right? Then, that is an absolute no-brainer. Do it as fast as possible. So that was the big obvious ones. The other thing, when people ask like, why are you guys different? Why have you guys been successful? My best answer for them is we have always operated kind of our management team we tried to kind of give them like, hey, we have a 24-hour rule, which means whether it's an employee, a tenant, whoever, if you're calling us with a problem, we want you to have either an answer within 24 hours, or we want you to at least know, hey, here are the steps of how we're going to solve that problem. Because obviously sometimes if it's an
Furnace.
AC,
Yeah.
furnace AC, and the guy's backed up for 4 days, well, hey, sorry, this is our guy, or it's going to take 4 days for whatever reason, order parts, whatever. At least that is communicated to say, hey, here's what the problem is, here's how it's being handled. And so we try and make sure everyone knows where everything stands within 24 hours. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time, just, maybe if weekends or, depending on when emails come in or whatnot. But, that is one thing that, we've had countless. I think we used to have a drawer at the office. I think we cleaned it out, but we used to have a drawer at the office at different cards and just little notes people would leave us just saying, hey, you guys were great landlords. Thanks, blah, blah, blah. And I know you remember all the crap. You remember all the, the awful situations, the tenants that just won't leave you alone. But getting that card is worth 20, annoying tenant issues who don't appreciate what you do. You get that one and you know that, hey, we're doing things the right way. We just got to keep doing it. And obviously understanding you're not going to please everyone. There are just some people that it doesn't matter what you do. You could buy them a new house. There would be something wrong with the airflow of that brand new house. You're just not going to please everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I love the 24-hour rule. That's a great idea. Dan, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they would like to do so?
Yeah. So I'm really good at email. Email is probably the best way. My email address is dan@43holdings.com. It's the number 4, number 3. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And seriously, if anybody's interested, I love talking mobile home parks. Andrew and I will just randomly start up a text conversation, and it leads into all kinds of things. So, it's a small group, right? You own more than a couple parks. Like you pretty much, you're going after some of the same deals, the same people. I mean, friggin' mobile home park movers, right? We all know the same, 5 people that move all the homes in the entire Midwest. So it's a small community. So so please, if anyone's interested, reach out to me via email. I'm pretty good about getting back to people, and I'm more than happy to chat or answer any questions. So
awesome, dude. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, Dan.
Of course, anytime.
That's it for today, folks. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Hey, are you getting value out of this show? If so, would you mind please going over to iTunes and leaving the show a quick 5-star review? I have a goal of hitting over 100 5-star reviews by the end of 2021, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could help contribute to that. Thanks ahead of time for making my day with your 5-star review of the show.